Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Exotics Radio Podcast. I'm going to be sharing the link. There you go. Sharing the link. So, everybody, I've got quite a few exciting new stuff for you going on. I've been working with the technician for Fat Cat Radio, which is the other project that I'm working on. And we finally got a soundboard going up. So we are trying to work things through. And I hope you guys can hear me. Can you guys hear me? I hope at least. And I'm also waiting for Scott to come up and join us here. I see Spider Mom is here with us. So we've got 3 people watching now. So if you guys know anything or wanted to know about anything about Scott's radio podcast adventures, feel free to ask. Right now, I'm enjoying Have a Drink with Me Friday because, it's that day. That's what we do here. We have a drink every Friday. I also want to forewarn you, we've never played the soundboard before live, so you guys are the first ones to hear the soundboard and sound quality. If you guys think it's off or if you guys think it kind of is iffy, feel free to give us feedback. We work hard for this, but I guess that's just how it goes. But hold on 1 second. I'm gonna turn up my mic. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Spider Mom says, yeah, they can hear you. All right, we've got Scott's Animal Adventures joining us at the stream. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. Very, very good. So, how's it feel to be live?
Nerve-wracking.
Okay, one second. I believe I can barely hear you.
Oh, okay.
So
Is there something I need to change?
No, it's not you on your end. It's my end. Because remember, we just broke out the soundboard, just finally got it working. So we're kind of tweaking it a little bit. So please have a little bit of patience for us.
No worries.
How about that? Can I hear you now? Let's see if I can hear you now.
Testing.
Oh, there you go. There we go. Hey, that's okay. Perfect.
Awesome.
Like I said, right now I have the technician with Fat Cat Radio. He's actually doing this for free on his own time. It cost me a bottle of cognac, but hey, I gotta love him. So you guys give a big shout to Zelik if you guys ever hear the Fat Cat Radio side, once we get that up and running. Again, he gave us a wonderful soundboard. So what's going to happen is later on in the show, and in the first 15 minutes of what I do is I normally interview you. And then after 15 minutes, we take a brief break. We play some music. We've got live music now. Isn't that cool? And then after the song, we come back and we gather up and continue on.
Okay.
It's a radio. It's what we do here.
Yeah.
So, tell us about how long have you been into isopods?
So isopods, in keeping terms, has been a bit of a lockdown experience. So starting off, when I done my BOA, I wanted to really get the cleanup crew right for the bioactive. So the main thing to get that started was I really looked into what wood lice would be the best. And then I looked at previously I'd had mixed species. I joined a couple of groups and found out that was the wrong way to go. So it's really just gone from there. And now I'm keeping 10 colonies and it's only going to expand from there.
Okay. So which colonies do you have? You have so much wealth of knowledge, I have to ask.
I have, like I say, I've got 10 colonies. I have Porcellio laevis, which I have 4 morphs of, all in different tubs. I have Porcellio hoffmannseggi, which are the largest isopods you can keep. They're from Spain. They're really cool. I also have Porcellio species Sevilla caramel, which is a morph of the standard caramel, a morph of the standard Sevilla. And then I also have Armadillidium klugi, Armadillidium albino species, and Armadillidium parakai. And then finally, I have Oniscus ocellus, which is the native UK isopod, also known as common shiny isopod.
Okay. Wow. Now isopods isn't the only thing is the only things you keep. I've asked you this before. What did you have? You practically have a zoo at your house. Do you
Yeah,
want to elaborate on the rest, or do you want to just focus on your isopods?
I'm happy to elaborate. So if I start off with my isopods, like I say, I've got the 10 colonies of isopods. I have 4 species of millipede, which are absolutely brilliant. I'm really enjoying keeping them. They're not a display pet, as most of the time they're in the substrate, but when you do the maintenance and that, and you catch them sort of doing their own thing, they're really interesting, and I really enjoy sort of having them for that. But for the most part, you do have like a tub of dirt with leaves and different bits of like rotting wood and stuff in. But they're really good. I'm keeping some beetles, which I made a converted aquarium for. So that's just a little 10-litre aquarium that I converted and put vents in. So that was quite a fun project during lockdown. Got 3 snakes. So I've got a boa, a hognose, and a corn snake. And then I don't personally own, but have in the family 3 dogs, 4 fish tanks, 1 pond, 2 guinea pigs, and a bearded dragon,
Oh
which I
wow.
have quite a lot of influence with, which is good.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's just sum that up. He just has a zoo. He has his own
Yeah,
personal zoo in his house. He just wakes up every morning, goes out into his room, stretches, feels the force of nature, and then has to go take care of it.
yeah,
That's awesome. Now, I'm going to touch on your millipedes just a little bit because I've noticed they've picked up in popularity.
yeah.
So, if somebody wanted to get into millipedes, where would they start? How would they get them? Who would they talk to? Because you don't see many YouTubers, you don't see much YouTube on YouTube about millipedes. So, where would they go? Who would they talk to?
Yeah, so the main thing about millipedes, in the UK, you've got a few suppliers. The main ones being Tony Webb at Venomous Visions, the Spider Shop, which is run by Lee Arden, and I believe there's a Portsmouth Tarantulas. I'm not sure on the actual site, but I'm pretty sure they sell millipedes as well down there. Um, and the main thing that you can do if you're looking to start out and you have access to Facebook is to really just get on some groups and sort of find some of those invert groups, Raggy Tees. I have a personal isopod and millipede group called Pioneering Isopod and Millipede Keepers. So that's got some great independent breeders and sellers, as well as like your company faces, and everyone's friendly and everyone will give you like useful advice and different species that would be good for your different levels of keeping.
Mm.
But the main thing is just to find like a forum or a community in your local area.
And so basically, that would be Facebook, um, like an inverts, like the tarantula forum that you always find, or the arachnoboards that you always find. So places like
Yeah,
that, you can always. Um, Now, in the means of care, because our invertebrates can't just say, "Hey, I'm sick," unless it's like physical, and then you're like, "Oh, things have gotten too far by then." Um,
yeah.
so how would they go about taking care of them? How would they, like, would it be a bad smell, or could you tell that they're going to that they're starting to get a little sick, or is it all play by ear, or is there like physical signs that you see? How would you be able to better their care and what to keep an eye out for?
I'm very new to keeping them, so I can't really answer that. But the one thing I have heard from quite a few experienced keepers and that I'm sticking to is their substrate equals their life. And if you don't give them a high quality substrate, then you will very quickly find that their quality of life and their life expectancy drops off and can lead to them prematurely dying, etc. So the main thing is to have substrate equal to the length of the millipede, at least in depth, and that substrate should be decayed leaf matter, decayed wood matter, a good high quality organic soil or compost, and it just needs to be a really good mix. And you need to sort of mature it. So the best thing you can do is get like a pre-mix millipede substrate from one of these online retailers that's got all the job done for you, and then just add to it. Because the one thing that you need is you need that mature decay and that starting to biodegrade itself, and that's what the millipedes will mainly feed on, and it's really critical to give them that. Um, Another really important thing is making sure that you have enough humidity without being over humid. So you want soil that you can grab and squeeze for most species, but not have like excessive water coming out. Because if you have too much water, then it can cause things like mycosis, which is basically, from what I understand, it's like a fungal um, infection that's caused by them being in a too humid environment, and it really affects their body and how they can sort of deal with like the pathogens around them. So it's really critical to get your humidity and your substrate right. The rest of the care would be to only provide a heat source on the side or the top, never below, because they will burrow to get away from heat. And if you've got it on the bottom, they will just burrow into more heat, and it will cause them to overheat even more. So hopefully that answers that question.
Oh, absolutely. No, my thing is one thing about heat. I've noticed heat never works with any real type of. Oh, I shouldn't say real type, but I don't think there's an invert that goes well with like external heating. Um, Now, I'm pretty sure there might be some out there, but in my case, if you take the tarantulas or any type of spider, they don't need the sunlight to survive. In fact, they want it dark, um, and heat. They'll cook themselves right on the heat. So I think it's a rule of thumb when you have inverts in general, just room temperature and no external heat.
Yeah, the one thing with millipedes is quite a few of the large species are African, and so they do benefit from having a heat slightly above room temperature. So I believe for the majority, it's sort of like 24 to 28 degrees that they do best in, which is why some people will add like heat mats to the side just to bump it up that little bit. But I do agree for the majority of species of inverts, you should keep at room temperature and just make sure that if it's comfortable for you, the likelihood is it's comfortable for them.
Well, that's easy for me because 25, 26 degrees is usually comfortable for me anyway. So, for
Yeah,
anybody out there, if they don't know what 25, 26 degrees is, because we're talking in Celsius, we're not actually talking in Fahrenheit. Because I know there are many listeners here are from the US, and so they, really they don't understand the conversion there. Um,
I believe it's 75 to 80.
I think it's like 80, something like that. So I'm very comfortable with that. My tarantulas, I think, are very, very comfortable. They're very happy, but I keep mostly tropical species and some fossorials that are from Africa as well. So they like it just a little bit more, a little bit higher than the 22, 23 degree. That's, comfortable for most people.
Yeah,
Now, we are coming up on our chance to play our music for the very first time. Are you excited?
yeah, definitely.
Get to bebop around. Okay, so what I'm gonna have to ask you to do is when I start the music, I'm gonna have to ask you to mute your mic because I don't want to mix the audio. It may not sound so good to the audience. Now, audience, this is where you guys come in. You guys get to vote on the quality of the sound. So if it sounds good and you like the song, give the thumbs up. If you don't, go ahead and give a thumbs down. My technician came running. I think I might be in a little bit of trouble. Anyways, for YouTube out there, mind you, because I know you're listening, I have a subscription to Epidemic Sound. I have permission to use this music, so do not start with me. Just because I said that, watch this. All right, so everybody, our first song coming up is Tiny Things by Giant's Nest from Epidemic Sound. I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. I'm Cracks, your host, and that was Tiny Things by Giant's Nest off of Epidemic Sound. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Scott Simford's like giving a bunch of hearts. And then we have Mr. John Russell, aka Crazy Kane, here with us today. It's good to see you. Again, everybody who's just joined, soon we will have an open Q&A after the interview. I hope, Scott, you're not in a hurry, are you? Scott? I think you're still muted.
Oh, hello.
Yep, there you I almost panicked there for a second. Even my technician's like running with this margarita in his hand. He's like, I'm going.
Sorry about that.
So, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the music. So let's get back into millipedes and other isopod care and talk. So now, this is kind of a serious chat. We are having a drink. It is have a drink with me Friday. I almost messed that up completely. I haven't even had that much to drink. What are you having for a drink? That's my next question.
I've just got sparkling water. I'm being really posh and boring, I'm afraid. I don't really drink, so I didn't really have anything on hand.
Oh no, it's okay. Yeah, as long as you've got something in your hand. That's the whole point of this is to actually kick back, relax with a drink, either adult-ish in nature
Yeah.
or even some green, as Spider Mother 1978 says, green tea. I know Scott's Inverts is probably going to be drinking his Yorkshire tea. We know him well enough. So, so there we have it. Again, this is whole thing is just about, kick back with a drink in the hand, whether it be tea, maybe a nice tall glass of lemonade, or in my case, something on the more of adultish side. Mr. Jack came over and filled my glass. For all of the children out there, that's an adult joke, and we'll just leave it at that. So, anyways, get back to you. Your invert care. We were just talking about the temperatures and the temperature ranges. My next question was, where do you think the people can get their substrate for their millipedes and their isopods?
Yeah, so in the UK at least, there are a few distributors that do sort of pre-mixed substrates. The main one that everyone would have heard of, at least in the spider community, would be the Spider Shop. As I mentioned earlier, if you're on Facebook in these groups, quite often you'll see Lee Arden in there, and he can sort of point you to the right place to go, as he sort of runs the Spider Shop. Other places are there are some sort of like newcomers that are doing mixes, all different bio suppliers. So my personal friend Nick Richards is doing some. His company is shropshireexotics.co.uk, and he has premix substrates for quite a few things: giant African land snails, assassin bugs, millipedes, isopods. So he's got quite a few different options, and they'll all vary slightly in the proportions of what's in there. Another really big thing for millipedes I forgot earlier was adding calcium to the substrate. If you add calcium dust, it will really help their exoskeleton and their sort of development to be healthy. So it's really good to add a source of calcium, and I usually add a cuttle bone as well. Just a piece, not like a full one. But yeah, another place that I've heard good things about is Bug Hut. I believe the website is bughut.co.uk. Don't quote me on that though. It's run by a guy called Aaron. He is on Facebook. He's on my Inverts Isopod and Millipede group. I'm really sorry, I'm just getting kind of nervous. But yeah, so he's on the Isopod and Millipede group, and if you have a look, you'll see some of his posts, and you'll find his website through him. So his name is Aaron G. Earl on Facebook.
So Aaron G.O. on Facebook. Okay, so later I will get all of that information from you, and I will put that in the description below, especially when I go to post the video. So I think that'll go well. Also, I want your information to your Facebook group, so you can put it also in the description. If you guys don't know about the show and how I run my podcast, when I first got into podcasting, I met a wonderful gentleman by the name of PodGod. Unfortunately, there was an unfortunate accident, and he's no longer here. But he was a wonderful man with a very great saying, and that's share some, get some. Basically, share the love and get some love. Or it could be just about anything, but his point of view was love. And so what I like to do is share love to the community, whether it be on YouTube or any other type of community. And what I want to do is have more streamers, more YouTubers. It doesn't matter how many people you have or not on here. I'm here for your knowledge. So what I want you to do, if you ever come onto the show, I want you to give me your information, all of it, to where people can find you. So later, I want you to share some of your information on the private chat there. and I will post it on the details when I go to post the video.
Yeah.
So that's just how this goes. I'm very small at the moment, and like I said, I just I find this is great because somebody's talking about apple pie, and now I've been distracted. Back to the millipedes. So how many? Now I've asked you this before. How many isopods are out there? How many species of isopod are known to man? Because I've noticed they're discovering more and more and more. Roughly every year, I think it's between 1 to 200 different species. So again, there's just so many. But how about the millipedes? I know you said you're a recent keeper in millipedes. Do you know how many known species there are, or?
Personally, I don't know how many species there are, but I do know that just the African giant millipedes, there are several. Well, there are probably over a dozen of those, and they would be like subspecies or color forms. There's a lot of new sort of research and importation of those species. Tony Webb is really, really keen on breeding and getting to know those millipedes, and he's getting some great success at the moment. So he's really pioneering some of the more hard to get species. And in general, I would always say in the UK, we have two main species of millipede. One is like a flat millipede, and the other one is black with white legs. And personally, I don't think there was any millipedes in the UK. So you can only sort of attest to, if you look, you will always find a massive selection, and all people are trying to do is find these sustainable sources to bring into the hobby and sort of prove out. And that's the thing that I really love, is like you'll always find something that you haven't really seen before. And as long as it's all ethical and people are doing it the right way, I think it's a brilliant thing. Because if, say, climate destruction or something like that happened in the wild, you'd at least be able to have these animals in personal collections or in zoos, and I think that's brilliant. But I can't tell you how many millipedes there are. I just know that I believe Tony is working with around 30 or even more at the moment. So
Oh, wow.
more than I'd even thought.
Oh.
But millipedes are definitely
Huge
something
number.
that's sort of coming. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just okay. When I first got into collecting tarantulas a long time ago, I got into entomology for a short bit, and I loved it so much. I'm kicking myself that I didn't get into arachnology, which that's my main hobby. That's my main love, which is kind of strange and odd. But when you get into entomology, you touch on a lot of different inverts, including millipedes and isopods.
Mhm.
Now, my question for you: what are your plans in the future for your collection? Because I've noticed you've been working on a lot of things right now. So, do share the juicy details.
Yeah. So the main thing that I started with, in like the original idea, was to have a different cleanup crew for each Viv I have in my room. So the boa has one type of isopod, which is a P. laevis. The corn snake has Porcellanides pruinosis, which is a smaller, very prolific isopod, and he has three different colours of those. And the hognose has the Armadillium perikai. So the main thing I wanted was something different in each tank, and doing that really showed me the scope of what is out there. And so my main thing at the moment is I want to have something on the side that isn't necessarily a sole business. It's not done for profit. It's not done for any kind of move other than the fact that I really enjoy keeping them. I love the look of them and the variety you get. And the main thing with me as well is it means that I know every so often or fairly consistently, if I do really well, I'll have that bit of money coming in from something that I enjoyed doing, and it's something I could never do with my reptiles because I just don't have the space, in my opinion, to do reptile breeding the way that I would want to, and I am very opposed to having things like rack setups where you have more animals but less of a quality of life. So even with my isopods, if my dairy cow culture gets much bigger, I will up it to a 30 litre tub from a 10 litre. So it's got 3 times the amount of space to then breed and go from there. And I think that's the way that I want to move. I want to have everything as high tech as possible with my reptiles, and with my isopods I want to give them the right quality of life and only keep as many as I can care for in, say, a 2 hour cleaning session, which sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about 2 hours with my reptiles included, it's quite a small space of time. And I know people that have got literally hundreds of species and their collections that they sell, and they are doing it as a business, and that's not going to be what I do. So I'm just doing it for pleasure, for the enjoyment and the satisfaction of seeing the care done right and seeing the animals sort of breed and do their own thing and see their personalities. And it's really good. And I also like giving back to sort of like my friends and the people that I can. So even if someone didn't necessarily have the full amount of money, but they really wanted to get into isopods and they were local enough, I would happily drop the price or do them a small amount for no cost at all, just to get them into the hobby, because I think that's the way that things should be. I don't think that money or anything like that should be above being a good human, like being a good person and sharing your love with like people that want to get into it.
Oh, absolutely. No, and that you have to understand as a buyer, I'd rather have somebody understand fully of what I'm getting or trying to buy or purchase or, get into the hobby of, than go to somebody who's looking after the profit. Now, I understand that, but you also have to understand as well, people are also in the hobby to basically get paid back what they put in. So keeping a small colony, keeping a small collection, that's the best way to go. Because then you're doing it, like you said, for the pleasure. You're doing it for the fun. It's not work. Um, and so, you're doing many things to try and get, some of the money back, as I said, but you're also doing it for the fun of it. So you're not putting it off until, oh, well, I can do it tomorrow. When you take care of an animal, I always go by, there is no tomorrow. My
And
cats don't get
likewise,
fed tomorrow. My cats get fed today. My cat's water doesn't get changed in the morning. Tomorrow morning it changed in the morning this morning. And it same goes with my spiders. I treat them very much the same in that regard. If my
yeah,
spiders need water, they get it immediately. There is no, oh well, they can do it without. No, 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 no. I don't play that game. But I think it's because I have the passion and the love for them, and so that goes along with if I would ever get into breeding, which is a high possibility in the future. By the way, just gonna point that out. But that's just because it's something I want to do. It's not something that I have to do. Um, and I think that gives you a different, more sensible perspective on your future. Now, one more question before we get into the music, if that's okay with you.
yeah,
All right,
completely.
you're doing great because I could tell you're a little nervous, but you're doing awesome. I could tell
You
you're
should
also
see
starting to relax a little bit as longer
the
as this goes, so we're good.
yeah, the bloopers from the YouTube videos I do are amazing. I'll send you some at some point.
Yes, awesome, awesome. Now, my question to you is, uh, we have the millipedes, we have the isopods, and we're talking about their care, where to get them. Now, my question is, are they financially sensible? Now, because you always find these beautiful tarantulas in this beautiful enclosure, and you're like, I know exactly how much you spent. That's not cheap. So I always get a little angry with, especially with some of the YouTubers. I'm not going to call out any names, but I always get angry because I'm like, ooh, don't call
Yeah.
it a sensible hobby and then have that display.
For example, the Simoxagorum, or however you say that,
Yes.
the
Yes,
blue label one.
exactly. That's
I
exactly
can't
what I'm
even
getting at.
imagine. Yeah. For
So,
me, um,
okay.
it's exactly what I was going to go on to, because I could quite happily go on to in Europe. There's a company called Insektenleben, which I believe is German for insect library. And basically, they have all manner of isopods, everything you can imagine. But you can go on there and type um, rubber ducky, Cubaris rubber ducky, and see them for over £100 for like one isopod. They've gone down in price, but they're expensive. And personally, I don't see that, because I get the obsession, and I get the fun of seeing these cool looking, they look like little duckies like you put in your bath. But if you're spending that much money, you've got to be getting a return for it. So what I plan to do is, I've got my Porcelio Lavis, which say are £5 for 10 of them, typically plus postage. Um, but those are brilliant because they breed so fast. And if you can sell 10 every month, then in 6 months' time, you can go out and you can buy a more affordable Cubaris starter culture. So the one thing I believe in any hobby is, you should only put in what you're prepared to put in. And if you want to go that bit further, get a return first before you progress. So you're saying about breeding tarantulas, use those affordable tarantulas to get that Simoxagorum that you really want. And don't think of it as, you know, I'm getting this because I'm going to start a breeding project and I'm going to do all this. Get it because you want to get it, because you enjoy what you're looking at and you enjoy the husbandry and everything like that. And then when that pays off, look at what your options are. You could get 5 cultures of this, or you could get 1 culture of that, and it's all to do with your space that you've got. And if you're going into rubber duckies and Cubaris in particular, you've got to think about the additional care, because they're from Asia. They need lime deposit, so either like limestone rocks or like powdered lime to go in their substrate, and it's a real whole nother ball game to play in that park. And you've got to be prepared to have things go wrong. And if you're spending 80% of your available income on that big project and on that big thing, and it all goes tits up, you're now stuck with an empty box full of dead woodlice that you couldn't care for because you weren't at that level. And people will do that because they get sucked into the hobby, and the I'm gonna say addiction, because it is, and it's not a bad
Oh, that is,
thing.
I have to admit that
But
is an addiction.
it's literally like, you see it there, you've got the money in your bank account, but once you've spent it, you've got like a tenner left. So there's no real sensible reason to do it, and I know people do, but for me, I have been very lucky with my isopods. I've been able to get a couple of species that retail between 20 to 30 pounds per 10 of them. And I've been very happy this morning because I've seen one of them has produced babies. The downside
Oh,
being that the only male
congratulations.
left in the colony is now dead, so I need to look at getting some
Oh,
more.
no.
But I've got babies, so I've got a future at least. Um, but it's all about where you get them from, and if you can get them at a price that suits you. Because like anything, you can go to one person and get a price that's 20 quid less than what another person's selling it for. But if that other person is selling it guaranteed next day with heat packs and you're going to get it live, I'd rather go for that and just save that little bit extra money to do it than go for the small person doing it for cheap but sending it out in a bag, and the likelihood is half of them are going to be dead.
Yep.
You want to go for that responsible seller.
Yep, I have to agree with that. But I'm gonna pause you right there.
Yeah.
We've got we're well past the time of our next song. So we're gonna go into our next song. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't realize what you're listening to, you're listening to Exotics Radio Podcast. I am Crax, your host, and we have Scott's Animal Adventures here with us today, doing his interview on his isopods, millipedes, and of course, possibly his snakes. Maybe we can wrangle him up and doing some snakes here later. But we've got our next song coming up, because I know you guys didn't come here just to hear us talk. You guys also came here for the good music. I am playing this from Epidemic Sound, so please go get a subscription like I have and go play your hearts out. They have great beginner songs, great beginner artists is what I wanted to say. For some strange reason, the words got mixed up. Now, you are listening to Have a Drink With Me Friday, and our next song coming up is Oak City by Sarah. Thank you guys for listening. And welcome back, everybody. I am Crax, your host. That was Oak City by Sarah. Not typically the music I would normally listen to. Normally I would have all of this preset. I speak English, I promise. Preset in the future. This is just one of those days where we were just trying to rush to get everything to work. And so I picked off the songs off the top of the list from Epidemic Sound. Now, again, I am not getting paid or sponsored by Epidemic Sound. So if you like what you hear and you like the interaction, well, maybe you don't like what you hear. I will play better music in the future, I promise. But if you like what you hear from Scott's Animal Adventures or just the layout of this podcast, please feel free to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and maybe just leave a comment or two. Appreciate it. Now, I also want to give a shout out to a couple of people who have been very engaged in our chat today. So I just want to say thank you, Spider Mom 1978, Scott Animal Adventures for being here, Rachel Turner, Scott Inverts. You guys are great. And we also have the one and only Tony Webb here with us. So I appreciate everybody being here. And again, if you guys want a straight out shout out and to say hi to the world, just leave a comment in the chat section. I will promise I will get to you. I will give you a shout out because you guys are just as important than us just being here as well. So let's get back to Scott. How you doing?
I'm good.
So we've talked about millipedes and isopods, the way of keeping, the importance of being a sensible breeder. Now, again, I know you have more than just the isopods. I know you have more than just the millipedes. You have a beardy and a couple of snakes. Can we talk about them a little bit, or do you want to continue with the isopods?
No, definitely. I mean, reptiles are my first love and main love. So I'd love to get stuck in and get some questions going about them because I've run 2 reptile groups. One's more for beginners looking for that sort of gentle guidance, and I've also made my own personal care sheets for the majority of beginner species. There's a few I've still got to do, but I have, I believe, about 30 or so species covered for those beginners, and also have a schedule and jobs, which is basically a chart that you can print off, and it gives you a day-to-day maintenance, monthly tasks and yearly tasks that you'd expect with that species. So definitely I'd love to get into some reptile questions if you've got.
Oh, I've got lots of reptile questions, but after we get done with the reptiles, we will start a Q&A. I hope the audience is prepared, the audience is ready. But first off, with the reptiles. So, with keeping a beardy, I know this is going to sound weird, but when I look up on how to keep a beardy, because that has always been in the back of my mind, from my understanding, they're fairly easy to care for. But there are many things that also comes with them, so you have to keep that in mind as well. But fairly easy. Now, I always see these little ducks near the bottom, at the base of the tail, and I see people always cleaning them out. What is that, and what are they doing?
So what you're seeing there are the femoral paws. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. And what they are is they are basically the bearded dragon's way of scenting its territory and communicating with potential mates. So a lot of the beardies with the blocked paws that you see, they will be, I believe, male. This is when I get it wrong and I look like a silly person. But yeah, I believe it's the males, and what they're doing basically is when they come into, say, the breeding season, or they feel territorial, they will use them to basically rub up on surfaces, and they produce an oily secretion, which is picked up by the other bearded dragons in proximity. So I believe most of the problems with like blockages typically occur in collections with multiple, because they will be somewhat communicating with each other even though they're in their own tanks. And the main thing is they generally will sort themselves out, but you need to keep an eye on them because they can get impacted. And some people say loose substrate has a part to play. It's somewhat debated.
Okay, so basically you're mixing oil with dirt, and you have an open pore that just fills up, so it possibly can get pretty gnarly in there. Not to get too detailed. I know some people, it's dinner time for some people, so we're gonna keep it nice.
If you think of it as just a spot, it's the same as getting a spot, but it's obviously more prominent.
Yes. Okay. So that answers that. So keeping a beardy, I understand. Now there is a huge debate between beardies, and that is the bone disease. Some people will say it's inherited. Some people will say that absolutely is not true. What is your thoughts on that?
Metabolic bone disease is a product of improper care, and that is, in my opinion, the be all and end all. There is no genetic predisposition to metabolic bone disease. The way that it occurs and what causes it is the deficiency of vitamin D3, inhibiting the absorption of calcium and other minerals into bone structure, which then causes, as the beardy grows, to have weak, almost bird-like bones. They become really porous, really fragile, and you'll get developmental issues with, as you can see on some, you'll have like an overbite or an underbite, or eye sockets that look way bulged out, and all horrible manner of stuff. And the main reason for it is improper UVB light. So when you keep a beardy, although they are easy, bulletproof, and just amazing to start as even beginner pets, you need to really think about, are you informed on what bulb you're getting? Are you just going to go to a pet shop and listen to 9 times out of 10 very poor advice? Pet shops, you're talking about people that clean animals and water animals, and typically in a lot of these larger chains you get over in the States, and unfortunately some shops in the UK, they will give you a starter kit, and 9 times out of 10 that starter kit isn't adequate for the animal. It will have a coil type fluorescent bulb which puts out a very high UVB output at an extremely close distance from the bulb, whereas you really need a T5 UVB tube. And what that is it's a tube that's 15 millimeters in diameter, so I believe that works out to about 3/8 of an inch or so, probably a bit bigger actually. And it then allows for proper UV distribution for them to bask under, and that will give them natural synthesis of D3, which will then give them the ability to uptake calcium and get all the nutrients from their diet and from their everyday life. So the biggest thing for bearded dragon is getting that UVB right, and the best place I can tell anyone to go for that is the Reptile Lighting group on Facebook, run by the Advancing Herpetological Husbandry. It's a mecca for in-depth information and help at all levels. And if you listen to the likes of Francis Baines and Roman Morin, you will go very far very quick, and you'll get a very quick understanding that anyone can take away and implement in their own collection.
Okay. Well, yeah, you mentioned symptoms earlier, and I want to give Rachel Turner a shout out. She said that one of the symptoms is also dragging legs behind, like an army crawl. So, for you guys just tuning in, I'm Cracks, your host. This is the Exotics Radio Podcast, and we've moved on to bearded dragons and other reptiles, and we're talking about symptoms of, you called it metabolic bone disease, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is it possible to get over this disease? Because I can imagine, you get a pet, a young one that hasn't been taken care of very well, from either a big time breeder, or maybe somebody who got one for their child and didn't realize how much effort can kind of go into keeping an animal. Especially, I always see this with tarantulas. They always get this tarantula. It's cute for about the first 5 months, and then the tarantula molts, and you've now got a 14, 15 centimeter beast on your hands, and they're like, this is not what they signed up for. So they end up trying to find a home for an animal. So so I can understand where some people would get a bad rap from getting an animal from a bad place. Now, my question to you, is there a way you can actually get over that, or maybe treat it to where they can fully recover, or can they even fully recover? By the way, I just want to give a proper shout out to Ben's Pets, who has just come in, and Bailey's Bug Blog, who just says hello, everybody. Oh, and Scott's back. He apparently went to take care of his kid. So that was my question to you. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. The main thing with MBD is once the damage is done, in advanced cases, you cannot undo it. The one thing that I have seen is a leopard gecko, and Rachel's seen this as well on my group. A person on Facebook called Welsh Morphology Photography. A nice girl called Candice runs it. She takes pictures of all different reptiles and different things. Really awesome. Really gives you a different perspective on these creatures. And she had a leopard gecko called Bones. And when she first got it, it was literally dragging its legs behind it, like it just didn't have any communication to them. She provided UV, and within weeks it had gained the ability to then move, and it's made a somewhat full recovery, which is incredible, all through UV.
Oh, see, this is what I'm talking about. I love happy stories. I really do. So I'm hoping people come more and more with more happy stories, because there's just no sense for an animal to suffer. That's just period, especially if a human's taking care of them. In the wild is completely different, that we have no control over. But we have control what goes into our houses and what goes under our roofs. So that there's no excuse. But with that being said, is there anything other than the light bulb? Is there anything else you would like to tell beginners getting a bearded dragon? Or you guys call them beardies. Is there anything in the beginning hobby? Is there like a species that's similar and you need to be careful of, or is there anything like that? Or is there, because there's some tarantulas that look very similar, and you're like, that's an old world. Nope, that's not a new world. But to an untrained eye, they can actually make that mistake.
Yeah, there is one thing, and well, I said there's one thing. There's a couple of things. One would be the loose substrate versus non-loose substrate debate. If you feel like you don't want to put the animal on a loose substrate, it's perfectly fine, but stay away from carpets and fibrous materials. So always have it on something like a tile or lino or something like that that's not gonna keep on catching on those claws, because otherwise you can end up ripping claws out of bearded dragon toes, and it's really not nice. And I feel really bad about people always saying reptile carpet, because it's terrible. Nothing should be kept on reptile carpet, in my opinion.
Now I'm just gonna so people understand why I'm flexing my fingers. There is one thing that I can't even watch in movies, and that is when they start doing the punishment or extraction of information using fingernails. I can't do it. So for an animal to go through that just makes me so uncomfortable. I can't. I'm just gonna move on because I can't even explain.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That makes me feel a little queasy just talking about it. But no, from my understanding, they're like I forgot the correct scientific term. There's actually a scientific term, and I got to go look it up. Maybe one of the audience can look it up. There's a term for when they need multiple types of surfaces. So take a turtle, for example. They would need the water, and then they would need dry land. So you would have to put both of those in the enclosure. So my question to you:
dragons, that's beneficial.
Exactly. So with the bearded dragon, they have, if they can pick and choose where they want to go at what time, that sounds like so much of a healthier environment for them.
The best thing you can do for any animal is give them choice, and any way that you can implement that is going to be a benefit to that animal. So even with my boa, I'm looking at possibly getting a waterfall that's powered by a little pump. You can buy them just to place in, and that will give the boa the choice of running or standing water, so it can soak. But it's also got a water source that's constantly flowing, which is more natural to what it would get in the wild. And I think stuff like that, like the loose and the non-loose, and having shade and light, having different hides, different levels to where they can go in the vivariums, and that is, it really kicks up your husbandry and your care. So it's really beneficial to do that.
Okay. Now, before we get onto your snakes, I have another song because we've taken so much time to explain in between. We haven't really been keeping the time. And I am to blame for that. I just got super excited because we were talking about a couple of my favorite subjects. And time flies when you're having fun, pretty much. So are you okay with taking a small break here? And we'll play another
Yeah,
song?
of course.
All right. So thank you everybody for listening to Fat Cat Radio. I am Cracks, your host with Scott's Animal Adventures. We are talking about reptiles and the like towards the end. Now remember, we do a half-hour question and answer or Q&A at the end of towards the end of the show. We do that for about 20-30 minutes. So the podcast is about an hour and a half itself, and then for another QA, it's another half hour. So basically a 2-hour runtime. In between, we do like to play some music. Now, we do play music from Epidemic Sound. I am not somebody from a, what do you say? I'm not somebody that gets sponsored by them, but I do like what they do, and they do give a lot of newer artists basically a spot in the spotlight, you should say. And that's what I like to do here as well. So our next song coming up is What Do We Do to Love by Hallman and Elwyn.
Whoa, oh, oh. Da, 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 da.
And I apologize about that. I was trying to catch it in time. Oh my goodness. Thank you all for being here. I would love to give everybody a shout out. So if you're here, leave a comment in the section below, or you could just hit us up in chat. I will give you a personal shout out right now. We have Bailey Bugs blog with us. We have Spider Mom 1978, Rachel Turner. Hello. We have one and only Stefan Harrop. I hope I got that wrong. Right. I hope I didn't get it wrong. Is what I meant to say. We have Scott's Animal Adventures here with us doing his interview, and we have Scott's Inverts. Now, if you guys know each other, that's great. But if you don't know who each other are, go check out some of the people I just mentioned. You've got Scott's Inverts, Bailey Bugs blog, and Spider Mom 1978. All the names you see there, you can actually go and check up on them on YouTube. And definitely give a like and a subscribe button, or hit that like and subscribe button for Scott's Animal Adventures. I wish I had sounds I can kind of intro you in with some claps. I got to work on that. So how are you doing, Scott? Hanging in there?
Yeah, hanging in there. Yeah, I'm enjoying this. It's good.
That's good. That's what this is what Have a Drink with Me Friday is all about. You sit down, you talk about a subject, and you relax. I know the biggest key in life is to relax. I'm going to live by that. I just wish I could follow my own advice.
You should have seen me before this. I was not relaxed.
You did say you had a very busy week, and I applaud you for keeping it all together and being here on time. So now we're just gonna kind of mosey on over into your snakes.
Yeah.
So how did you get started? Well, I know how you got started because you have this huge love for reptiles and snakes. But how did you get yours? How did you acquire your pets?
Begging and lots of it. So Mum didn't like snakes. Mum was terrified of snakes. But Dad kept snakes before. So luckily, I convinced Dad to convince Mum, and we went down to a somewhat local pet shop where I used to live. It's a place in Dunstable in the UK called Wrigley's. They've got a couple of locations now. I believe it's in Leighton Buzzard and Milton Keynes too. And they were just really good. They had a number of different corn snake morphs, and I picked out my first, which was a wild type Carolina corn snake. And I had her for 12 years, which was really good. And the sad thing is, I'm pretty sure she passed due to my lack of knowledge on egg binding. And luckily, when I got my boa, all of my care and my setups that you'd seen now have all come in under 12 months. In many cases, since April last year is when things started changing. Before April, I still had a heat mat in my corn snake enclosure, and I was still keeping on aspirin. So I believe the main love came when I got my first corn snake, and sort of holding it in the shop. I believe, you always, if you're there in person, you feel a connection to that one specific animal. You can hold 10, but one will always stick out in your mind. And we got prepared, we got everything sorted. It was a fairly basic setup to start off with in an aquarium, and like I say, my what I would class as my proper keeping, my more advanced, and especially like the bioactive, has all been in the last 12 months. And the main thing that triggered it was getting my boa. So the way that I have my snakes, I have had George, my corn snake. He's an Anery, much like Scott's is, the other Scott. He's 12 going on 13 this year. And then I got my boa last year in August 2019. I forget, we're in 2021 now. And since getting Rocky, I joined Facebook groups, and I really got into it on Facebook and got that knowledge building. In November, I want to say, I got my Western Hognose, Alejandra, and she has been a bundle of joy since I got her. And by that, I mean she wants to kill me, but it's all a really good fun. They have a really notorious reputation. If you look into hognose snakes, um, they're very much all attitude, but no actual like bite to them. They just bluff, and it's really fun to watch. They're like little rattlesnakes.
Rattlesnakes without the consequences. Now, are you thinking about getting venomous creatures? Or you already have some, but because if I remember correctly, you have tarantulas.
No, I don't.
If anybody out there, this is one thing I want to make very clear, and I'll say this time and time again: venom is injected, poison is ingested. That's why you have poison frogs, but not poison snakes, venomous snakes.
You have poison snakes as well.
Oh,
It's
really?
a tiger keelback in Asia, and what it basically does is it will ingest the toxins from like the toads and the frogs, and it then uses that as its own defense against other predators. So it's got its own venom, and it will definitely mess you up, but it's also poisonous, so you can't even eat it. Which is quite
Oh, wow.
amazing. It's another adaptation that snakes have really sort of mastered in a couple of cases, but it's definitely not a common thing.
So just like the poison frogs, because the poison frogs, I forgot the name. This is there's an insect that they eat, or types of insects, just to make that clear, that they eat that makes them very that makes them poisonous.
Yeah, which is
So,
why you can keep them in a hobby without much consequence, because
right,
you're not feeding them those dangerous insects.
exactly. Oh, just a quick shout out to Scott Invers. He says his boy is 11 in August. So happy early birthday. I know it's a little early, but my mind is already in August right now. If I want it to be warm, I'm ready for the warmth.
Yeah, me too.
So are you thinking about keeping venomous snakes?
Well, if we're talking technical, I do keep one. The Western Hognose is mildly and very non-medically significantly venomous. The only time it will do damage is if you have a sensitivity or if you are allergic. So I have seen people get bit by a hognose and need stitches, and it's not very nice to look at. But in other cases, and in most cases, you'll get swelling, you'll get 2 marks, or like a set of teeth marks, because they have a Duvernay's gland, which is their modified saliva, and that then goes down a large ridged tooth, which I believe is called a premaxillary tooth or something like that. I'm not 100% on that term, but the venom from a hognose is a modified saliva, and it's a passive injection. So it will just seep out, and with pressure, it will work its way into your bloodstream. Whereas with true venomous species, they will have a hypodermic injection system that they can physically push venom out, which is how you get like spitting cobras. And when you milk snakes, you could never milk a hognose, because the way that it produces the venom, it would all go on the cling film rather than going into the pot, and the
Right.
main risk, like I say, is allergy when it comes to those. But I wouldn't keep medically significant species.
Oh, okay. Because it sounds kind of like because in Sweden we only have one snake, and it's a viper, or an adder. It might be an adder, so don't quote me on this one. I believe it's the European viper, the European adder. I'm trying to think of which one it's called.
Yeah, so adders are a form of viper,
Okay.
just to clarify. And yeah, they're brilliant species, and if you can see them in the wild, they're absolutely stunning. I haven't had that
We have
joy
them
yet.
everywhere here. We absolutely have them everywhere here. They do. They're not as dangerous. They're actually not one. The most dangerous animal that we have, the two most dangerous animals we have, is the moose and we call it elk here in Sweden, and the honeybee.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious why, because especially with the allergic reactions out here. It can get very deadly very quickly, especially in small children or
Is
elderly.
there a my question would be: is there a predisposition for certain countries' genetics to be more biased to having that allergy? Like, is it a Swedish thing where quite a lot of Swedes are allergic?
I don't know. I don't think it is. I just think because of the number of people who have either passed away or been critically injured, to the point where near death, I think it would be the honeybee and obviously the elk is just going to stomp you. Once you go there, you're pretty much not going to come out the same, unless you're able to get away quickly, or if you're carrying a
Yeah.
firearm to protect yourself with. And usually those occurrences happen up pretty far north, where wildlife meets city life, kind of on a regular basis. So they're not even really scared of you either. They just kind of keep going. If they see you, you don't approach them.
Yeah.
Do your best to leave them to be them and mind your own business kind of thing. Now, if they're next to your car when you come outside and you're like, crap, I gotta go to work, call your boss. Generally, it's pretty widely accepted up north. Send a pic on your phone, be like, click, sorry, boss. I'm not going out there.
So a
9
trick
times
would
out
be
of 10, the boss will understand.
yeah.
So yeah, when it comes to the snakes here, like I said, we just have one because we're definitely too cold, and then of course we are separated from the mainland through the south. So the only way we have them is by natural means, and yeah, they're pretty adapted. They're pretty much adapted to the cold. They go pretty deep, so they don't freeze to death, and they get their metabolism drops so low. During hibernation, you would almost think they're dead. So yeah, they're not bothered. And like I said, most interactions are usually the animals that interact with them because of hiking. But in any case, it's usually the children and elderly that have an adverse effect to the venom.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you have them there because they wouldn't call them European. They wouldn't call them the European adder or the European viper for nothing.
Yeah, we do have adders. I can't remember the scientific name, but we have the white and black with red eye, and it's got the arrowhead on the top of the head, and they're just really epic. My mum's seen one in the wild, and I'm so jealous of her.
Oh, you should come to Sweden. We have tons of them. I think there might be some people that might give them to you to take away. But one thing about Sweden that differs from the UK rules and laws, now we're getting into the rules and laws and regulations. And I want to say thank you, Scott. Scott's invert says, anyone else find Crax's voice really relaxing? I know quite a few people who would highly disagree with you. Mostly I'm related to them, but so they might be just a little biased. But to get back to what I was saying,
the rules and regulations.
Well, I'm trying to think where I could start with the rules and regulations because there are so many differences. First of all, if you own a Cobra, you do not have to have any type of special license here. Not to my knowledge. I do not keep venomous snakes or highly venomous snakes, but to my knowledge, you do not need to have that because pretty much the basic law it is if you're keeping them, then it's your fault. If anything happens, it's your fault. Everything falls on you. Now, I do think it's good practice to let the hospitals know that you own these animals. So if one gets out, the police can be properly notified, or I should say the authorities in general, because it's not just the police. There's animal care, and we have plenty of animal control is what I wanted to say. So we have lots of animal control here. Due to all the wild animals that intermingle with our pets. But also we have laws that restrict invasive species, and there's no cobra that can be invasive to Sweden. There's absolutely nothing. There's no highly venomous snake that I can think of at the top of my head. Now, if you quote me and you find me wrong, please feel free to tell me I'm wrong. But again, there's no real regulation because they cannot become an invasive species. They cannot become an environmental threat. They become a threat to a person, and that can be sorted out through the law system and through court, but they cannot. Tony Webb says the Vipera burrus. Is it burrus or burrus? Latin is always lost on me. I apologize. I can't even pronounce some of my tarantulas' names. A lovely species, a lot of inbreeding, which is with the wild populations. They have been creating pathways so that different local populations can reach each other. That's actually pretty cool. And Bailey Bugs blog says only found in the South. But when it comes to Sweden, we really, our restrictions are very limited now. That's not, from what I've been told from many YouTubers, including Scott Sandverts, and I believe Bailey Bugs Bug blog. Blah, 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 blah. I will say your name properly, sweetie. I apologize right now. I would like to say booze was involved, but I haven't had that much drink, so I can't even use that. But the what I was going to say was, again, we just don't have that threat. So you have a lot. But my understanding, as I was being told by many of the other YouTubers, you don't have that option. There are high restrictions on keeping these animals. So
yeah.
My question is, if anybody was in the UK and they wanted to acquire some of the more medically significant animals, because I don't highly suggest it so much unless you're an experienced keeper. Now, because I have a friend of mine who lives in Brussels. Is it Brussels? I believe it's Brussels. I'm trying to think. I believe they live in Brussels. It's a friend I've met on Instagram, so we keep in contact, but we don't like to get too personal, which is just natural. But they end up missing their finger. Their hand had gotten bit, and it wasn't the venom; it was the secondary infection that had given them complications. Now, from my understanding, in most snake bites, whether it would be medically significant or not medically significant, infections happen quite often because of what you have to feed them, of course. Now, does that have to do with the ability of being medically significant, or is that just because the government says so? Because, if you're going to keep something medically significant, we want you to regulate that. Or does it also have to do with the dangers of keeping any type of reptile? Because it's not just medically significant. I've noticed it's what they would consider highly invasive as well. Because I'm sorry, but the UK has a pretty good environment when it comes to reptiles.
Personally, I've only seen regulations around endangered species where you would need a CITES paperwork, and you basically need, even with the captive born animals, you need to apply for the certificate when they're born, and then that certificate needs to be handed through whatever lineage of owners until that animal passes. So that is one form of regulation that I'm not sure if other places will have, but I would expect it to be a worldwide thing. And that is just to track, so you're not getting poached animals or unregulated breeding. It keeps an eye on who's doing what and if that animal has been acquired through lawful terms. The only other thing that I know of is the DWA that we have over here, which is the Dangerous Wildlife Act, and that is purely about medical significance. So in terms of snakes, it would be all front-fanged venomous snakes that I am aware of are on that. So that'll be all vipers, elapids, everything like that. There are two species of rear fang snake, being the African vine snake, also known as twig snake, and the African boomslang, which causes very bad side effects. I'm not going to go into it because it's a bit too gruesome.
Yeah, I know.
You don't want to.
Let's keep it nice.
Even just to research it, I wouldn't advise it if you're quite familiar.
I wouldn't
But
recommend any medically significant animal, regardless of what it is, for a beginner.
but that's the thing, and the issue with DWA is it's down to the councils. So as Scott was saying the other week, someone in Derbyshire could have a £300 DWA license, and someone in Lincolnshire could be paying £3,000, and it's all to do with the individual as well. Because I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure the main thing is that they're trying to keep others safe. So your license all depends on where you live. Are you next to a school? Are you next to a hospital? Are you in a heavily populated area? Are you fully detached in a cottage in the middle of nowhere? You know, what risk are you to the people around you? And then secondarily, what risk are you to yourself? What locks are you putting in place? What additional equipment are you carrying? What contingencies do you have? What paperwork and what documents do you have about the venom, about different situations and how to deal with them, and everything like that? And if you can prove that you've done that, then even in the hardest counties, you would probably be granted a DWA license, but you will be paying for it. You know, and that's without getting the animal itself. In terms of care, they're the same as any other snake. They're just a bit more dangerous. You need to put other stuff in place. But the cost of the animal and the cost of the enclosure is the same. It's just that added cost of the license to say, I have been approved to have this dangerous animal in my house.
And see that's the thing. I understand the purpose of you being a danger to the public. I mean, absolutely. If it gets out, if it gets even loose in the house, let's take a common snake here is a king cobra. Most keepers here in Sweden have at least one king cobra in their collection. I know it
Mhm.
sounds amazing. They're not allowed to take them to uh, like expos. You're not allowed to expose them to the public. That is a rule. But you are allowed to give them to not give them, but you are allowed to sell them for individual sales.
Yeah.
So that is completely different from the average from your guys' experience. Because if I wanted a cobra, I could just walk in. Hey, I want to buy one. I have this wonderful setup. Yada yada yada. And then, regardless of experience, they if they're greedy, they're going to sell it to me. If they're a good keeper, they're going to no, you have no experience. This is not the snake for you. But
Yeah.
we have several others that will be good for you.
Here's a corn
But again,
snake.
that's pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, it also again it depends. It goes back to our earlier discussion. Is it sensible for a beginner to buy something that takes that huge responsibility and care? So I would never recommend anything venom, anything with medically significant venom or poison for a beginner ever. That's just common sense right there. But
Yeah.
here in, like I said, here in Sweden, like I said, we do not have those regulations because we believe that it's your house. The government has no need to be in your house. They regulate everything else. They'll regulate the alcohol. They'll regulate the tobacco. They'll regulate, food. They'll regulate everything across the board. But when it comes to
I mean, you're
inside your
saying
house,
about.
huh?
Sorry, you were
Say
saying about on Scott's podcast the other week. You were saying about how breeding is regulated in Sweden, where it's not here.
no,
Is that right?
no. I was talking about that. That's spiders because of the endangered species. So
Oh, okay.
the regulation of uh, endangered species is regulated. Now, if you want to breed and sell, say, venomous animals, uh, pretty much the only thing that you would have to really do is individual sale. The individual sales are not regulated, and that's something we've been trying to fight for a very long time. Because if I'm a business, then we're stepping into a whole different spectrum. Because then it becomes regulated. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah, and obviously
taxes.
individual sale is only the volume that you can sell. So you could be a fully blown business but claiming as individual sale, surely.
Bingo. No, it's a
Yeah.
huge problem.
Yeah.
I had this discussion a long time ago with tarantulas. If you're into individual sales, who regulates the individual sales? There's nobody. So businesses who are upstarting are saying, hey, we have a guarantee that our animals will be alive, or we have a guarantee our animals will be in good health when they arrive. If they are not, then again, that we don't have control over everything, but we can discuss with you, get you either A, your money back, or B, we can replace the animal at either a cost to ourselves or whatever we've prior agreed upon sale. Again, we're held to a lot higher standard than an individual sale. But who sets that number? Who says, oh, if you make so many thousand kroner, then it's no longer an individual sale? Because you can sell a car individually for however price you want, as long as the inspectors or the government considers it. How do you say? Whatever the worth, the price tag. So if you've got a brand new BMW, you drove around for a week and said, no, it's not my car, and you want to sell it, most people would give it back or sell it back to the car lot.
Yeah.
But there are some people who will be like, would mark it up because it's only a week on the road. There's nothing wrong with it. And they'll mark it up. And to avoid paying the tax, they'll do that because it's a individual sale.
And the one thing I would say, and the saving grace for something like that in regulatory terms, would be to regulate the volume of sale for individual commodities. So if you are selling 5 cars a week on a 5-week working week, like 5-day working week, you are now a business. If you are selling anything under 5 cars a week, then you are an individual seller, but you're pushing it at 4. You've got to be careful. If you're talking about livestock, if you're selling a
cars are regulated,
endangered,
livestock is not.
Yeah, so if you put it into livestock terms, if I am in your country selling isopods,
yes.
If I am selling 500 isopods, individual isopods, not 500 lots, but 500 isopods, that is 50 sales of 10. And if I do that in a month, I then become business. You get what I mean? But then you've got to look at each individual type of animal and what that level is. And it is so difficult to do that because you think, how many snakes is business versus commerce, versus a person? And a government can't do that. Only the people in the business and in that hobby know what is an abnormal amount to sell as an individual.
Yes, but here's the issue. Who is going to dump the money into the department that regulates that, and who's going to be looking through yours as a private citizen that has done no wrong priorly to this? Who's going to look at you and say, well, no, you have to. Here's the thing. This is how they get around it. We do have a government entity, collecting the tax. So if you are only paying so much in tax, they're going to want to know why you bought a huge house or why you bought an expensive vehicle, because those things are regulated. So, when you make those big buys, it raises red flags here. But if you make small buys, put the money away, and then over a course of, say, a couple of years, and then all of a sudden you want to buy a house, all you had to do was say, well, I worked my butt off doing side jobs, and I saved all this money. There is no way they can tell you, oh, you did something wrong. There's no paper trail, pretty much. So that is the problem with individual sales here in Sweden. It is a problem, I will admit. But it is there's an easy way to get out of it, which kind of sucks. but I think we've let's see. I think we're getting closer and closer to taking care of it, because now we have the sites really hammering down, especially about the Brachypelma species. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to make sales on the Brachypelmes that I bought last year, because last year you didn't need the paperwork. This year you do.
Mhm.
And to file it, it's a headache. It's like it's like you made all of these nice, wonderful regulations, which is great. I support that. Then you made it unuser friendly. It's
Yeah,
like, wait,
well,
what?
with bureaucracy in general, and with that side of government, it's always I jump through one hoop into a fire. I get out of the fire, jump another hoop, and then there's an even bigger fire. And 5 months down the line, you finally got everything in gear. But now all of these slings that you wanted to get sold are now sub-adults, and you've then got to house all of them. So it becomes, you've really got to sort of play it smart, haven't you? And it's not something that a normal person could do. So often people will have to get external advice just to know that they're going through the right path.
Exactly. And then you have to pay people to help you get on the right path. It's phenomenal. But we're gonna take another break. We're going to come up with our last song before we take a Q&A. So ladies and gentlemen, get your questions ready, because we've got some answers for you. When we get back, you'll be able to either A, call up, personally ask Scott your question, or B, you can write it in the chat, your question. I will put up and pin up the link after the song. We have another song coming up. Are you okay with taking a break, or do you want to continue?
Yeah, I'm fine with taking a break. I will say in sort of 20 minutes or so, if we're still on, would it be good to sort of wrap up, because I have got a couple of things to do.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, we
Okay,
gotta
thank
we'll take question and answer a Q&A. It's usually between 20 minutes to 1.5 hour. So it
That's
won't take too much of your time afterwards. And then what we will do is we'll have we'll see if we can get some guests on. But we'll see how that goes into the future. So thank you everybody for coming to the show. I'm Krax. You're on the Exotics Radio podcast with Scott Animal Adventures as the interview. I hope you guys are enjoying the talk thus so far. Our next song coming up is "Be Free with Me" by Sign. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there. I kind of had to run away and then run back. I was like, no. Oh, whew. Now that I ran my marathon. Scott, you there?
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have to get the link. Give me a second. 1 second. For a second there, I had some feedback. Oh, I've got some. I have feedback, and I don't know where it's coming from. Oh, maybe. Oh, okay, there we go. I apologize about that. Let's see. Here we go. And ta-da! And the magic has been now done. All right, thank you everybody for being here. I am Cracks, your host. That was Be Free With Me by Sign. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to follow the link down below, you can come join us and ask your questions personally, or you can leave your questions in the chat. I'm sure Scott can answer that. Q&A is between about 20-30 minutes. He says he has about 20 minutes, and he's going to have to wrap things up. So spill your beans or forever hold your peace. Oh, did you enjoy today's show? Well, people gather their questions.
Yeah, it's been really good. Obviously very nervous coming into it. Still, I'm relaxing, but I'm not 100% relaxed, if I'm really honest. But yeah, it's been brilliant. And the funny thing is, it was almost easier with Scott's inverts when I was on the screen, because I had something like to kind of focus on and make sure that I wasn't like looking into the distance or anything. So it's definitely different doing a podcast, but I really like it, and I've really enjoyed it. You've been a great host, and I'm glad I was on time, because I was really worried I was going to let you down slightly and be a bit late. So yeah, it's been a really good day.
Just because you're late does not let me down at all. I had music. I could at least I could have filled everybody's podcast with just pure music. It would have been great. So either way, I was covered. So there would have been no disappointment in my end. So we do have our first question, by the way. Rachel Turner is asking you, have you ever considered bringing? They have considered breeding hoggies, but don't know whether it is worth it to make it the plunge or not. So, what do you have to say for that?
Hognose snakes are one of those species that are making a comeback. They were popular, then they basically went unheard of, and now they are coming back. If you are responsible and you take advice from some really good people, get yourself on some hognose groups and see what the breeders there have to say. I think it's definitely possible. It's a perfect snake to breed ethically, because if you have hognoses, you can keep them in very manageable sized bibs. My female is in a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot, so that is 24 inches square, or it is 60.9 centimeters cubed. Well, both cubed, but anyway. So you can tell that you've got ample space in a typical room to have a few individuals, And if you wanted to go that bit further and do 3-foot vivs, even in a 10-foot room, you've still got space for, say, 6 breeding pairs. And I think if you're starting, you're not going to have that many. And the babies, I would definitely say you want very tight fitting, well ventilated racks. I know I said racks, but with babies, you're not going to be able to really keep them in a full size vivarium and breed to sell. So the main thing I think that racks come into their own is for those very, very early stages of life and getting the animal established to then sell on. And that is the only time I believe that racks do make sense. In terms of breeding them, I think it's an American species. I wouldn't expect it to be too difficult, and with the humidity and the temperature requirements and the incubation, I would expect them to be quite forgiving in minor temperature fluctuations. So I think it's a great starter snake to get that breeding project, and there's a lot of scope in the market for hognoses and definitely their morphs. So I'd say go for it if you can.
Okay.
But it's something that you need to prepare for fully before jumping into it, definitely.
Okay. So, she also asked, though, this is Rachel Turner again. What species are you considering keeping in the future?
I can list about 20 animals that I would love to keep, but realistically,
Keep it short.
um, realistically, I would stick to my current animals for the foreseeable future. When George passes, I am looking at potentially going into another American species, which are the gopher, pine, and bull snake sort of group of species. And in particular, I would love to get my hands on a Depayjani, which is a Mexican mountain pine snake, and they are absolutely lovely. If you can get some photos on the internet, they are orange headed that then go into an inky sort of like black, and then they mellow out to like a purple tail. They're so stunning with a yellow background. So that's the main thing that I really see myself getting in the future. But I like to think about how long these animals live for, and I'm going to have my animal, my boa, until my 50s if I do things right. So I'm not looking at getting more than I've got because I'm comfortable where I'm at, and they take up the space that I'm happy with. And especially looking at moving out and sort of getting my foot into the world, I don't want to get a massive collection and then have to find somewhere that I can afford that can house it all, you know?
Oh, okay. So moving on to our next our question from Tony Webb himself. So Scott, do you see yourself applying for the DWAL in the future?
I don't. I am. I'm very sensible in the way that I know that I've been bit by a corn snake before, so I wouldn't want a viper. You know, if I'm not putting the care into not getting bit by what I've got at the moment, I wouldn't want to put that extra risk, especially as I'm looking to have like the future of like hopefully having kids, etc. I wouldn't want to put anyone else in that kind of situation where, for my own selfishness, I'm keeping these dangerous animals, and other people are having to put themselves at risk for my own hobby.
Okay. Tony Webb says the Pitiophis species, I believe I pronounced it wrong, are fabulous. Are fabulous. He's kept them for years. Rachel's is thinking about snows and albinos. Tony Webb says nothing wrong with that, Scott. It's good to know and understand your limitations, and I absolutely support that as well.
Mhm.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got questions, feel free to call in. I'll send up the link again. You're more than welcome to come up on the show personally. You're more than welcome to come say hi. give yourself a shout out, give yourself a pat on the back, and ask your questions. You're also more than welcome to send some questions our way through the chat. I don't mind. But if the Q&A is going to be slow, we're going to have to wrap this up quicker than we expected. So is there any more?
Sorry, I was gonna say, is there anyone that has any questions about how you would implement isopods into a reptile setup while we're here?
There's nobody. But since you brought it up, you're more than welcome to give us the rundown on that.
The main thing would be looking at the humidity requirement for the species you're going to put the isopods in with. The best start that you can do is getting something like a bowl or something that needs that 60 to 70% humidity or higher, and then going with a inexpensive isopod. A lot of the inexpensive ones will have morphs, so you can have a bit of a mix in the tank, and you just need to add like hiding spaces, and if they're in a bit of a drier setup, you'll need to have like a moist area. But the main thing is stick to the same species and just give them somewhere where they can rehydrate and provide leaf litter and rotting wood as you would in their normal colony tubs. And that is the key that I've found really works.
Okay. Rachel Turner says, yes, they do great in their gargoyles setup. So Rachel owns a personal gargoyle. I want to own a personal gargoyle. Now, is gargoyle just the name of your pet, or is a gargoyle?
It's a gecko. So they are from New Caledonia, the same as crested geckos, but they are a larger species.
Geckos are so cool, but I have cats, so that will never happen. Plus, my room is limited. I'm at my limit for tarantulas. Like you, I don't want to overstep my limits and know that the animals, are just going to simply suffer because there's no room. Tony Webb says, Scott, would you like to travel and see various species in their natural habitat, like a herping trip?
I'd definitely be interested in it. It's probably quite a few years down the line though, because I have goals I want to hit while I'm still in my 20s. For example, like moving out and sort of getting my footing as a person before I start looking at those exploits and sort of going out and seeing things in the wild. And I really just want to get established, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. It sure does. I have to admit, Rachel says that luckily their dog is really chill around the reptiles. I have cats. Anything on a shelf is not safe. So they're not allowed in my art studio where I keep my tarantulas. Now, my question for you is, how much, usually when you keep an animal, how much money do you usually spend monthly on keeping everything together?
That's a really hard one. I would say my most expensive animals are my isopods, but they're not expensive, and I'll explain why. And it's purely and simply because of setup and getting the right sort of distribution of leaf litter and the substrate and everything to set them up. And the main thing, because I'm running bioactive, is I constantly need that supply of leaf litter. And if you look at the value to cost, to buy a box of leaves, you're talking about, like, for example, like 10 to 15 pounds maybe for a box of leaves. And then for rotting wood, you're talking, say, a £5. So when you're talking about keeping a pet, my main cost will be the energy, and that comes down to the reptiles. But the most out of proportion cost would be the isopods bioactive supplies. because you can find them in, like, you can walk outside and get it. But to have that confidence to do it, I'm not there yet, so I'm buying them in, and that's a big cost for what it is. So that is what I class as my most expensive aspect of keeping.
Oh, okay. I can see. I can see that. Yeah. Rachel says that's one question she wouldn't want to answer either, because she likes to spoil her pets. I'm 100% with that. But I would like to give the audience a kind of a roundabout idea of how much they're looking at keeping. Because
Well, if I talk
one
about
of
a
these,
boa, sorry, if I talk about a boa, I've got a 100-watt bulb, a ceramic heat bulb. I've got a 22-watt LED, and I have a 30-watt, I believe, UVB tube. So the power cost of that, and that's without the extra stuff that I've added that I haven't really calculated, it can be quite an added cost on your electricity bill, because you need that amount of power to sort of run the setup. So reptiles, if you know your local energy rates, you can find a calculation online which will give you how much money it would cost per kilowatt hour, and it'll work out for you what the combined wattage of the electrical equipment will cost you a month. And that's really good for people that are looking for something that they can fit into their budget, because sometimes you'll buy this animal, you'll set it up, realize that you then need a light bulb that you were told you didn't need, and suddenly your electricity bill's gone up by like £10 a month or even more sometimes.
ouch. That
But I
can
can't give you
add up
an
over
exact
time.
price.
That can really add up over time.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, that's one of the perks of getting into the tarantula keeping. I'm just going to come for tarantulas because that's usually where I'm coming from is tarantulas. Is the cheaper aspect. I just did a project not long ago about how to build an enclosure less than €5, and it has to be, it had to have requirements. It had to be pretty, so it had to be aesthetically appeasing, but extremely cheap. And
Yeah.
we did a workshop, and we invited people over, and we actually put together these beautiful enclosures. And of course, these are not permanent enclosures. These enclosures were for juveniles, or if they were permanent, it was for dwarf species. And I don't recommend dwarf species for beginner tarantula keepers, mainly because they're generally skittish, more so than your average tarantula.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something I don't recommend.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say I think we're kind of getting short on time on your part, and I think people are out of questions at this point. Um, Tony Webb says we all say to customers if they collect their own, they'll save a small fortune. That is very true, especially when it comes to the oak leaves, the woods, and other substrate materials that you would need. Um, and again, that is actually pretty cheap, actually. Not something you would do for tarantulas, but that's a topic for a different day. So, is there anything else you'd like to add before I play the last song and end the podcast?
I'd just like to thank you for your time, and obviously everyone that's got involved in the comments. I do really appreciate it. I am slowly growing my confidence, but I'm still very, very nervous. So I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully we can tie in a couple of months or something, maybe for an update or something like that. But yeah,
Absolutely.
just thank you to everyone.
Absolutely. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it, especially since you had such a busy week. You were able to make it here. Some people, you were thinking you're stressed. Like, again, this is an easygoing podcast. So no rush, no stress. Kick back, relax. It's why we have a drink with me Fridays, so that we can all have a drink together, whether it be lemonade on your side and more of the adult versions of my side, lemonade with a little something else. And again, if you guys are out there and you guys are actually having a drink like I am, please drink responsibly. Don't do anything silly like drink and drive. Stay at home. Enjoy your evening. Drink as much as you want at home, of course, but do it responsibly. So with that being said, thank you again for being on here so much. And I would love to give some people some shout outs, especially. So if you're here in the chat, say hi in the chat. And so I can give you a proper shout out. First off, we have Tony Webb. Thank you for being here, Tony. I appreciate it. We have Spider Mom 1978. It's good to have you. Thank you so much. Scott Inverts, you made this chat, or I should say you made this podcast lively with your comments and your inserts. Thank you so very much for being here. We have Stefan Hodrup, also here. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I apologize again if I did not get it right. Again, thank you so much for being here. And we have Rachel Turner as well. Bailey Bugs blog. You guys were great. Thank you, Rachel, for all of the interactions and the questions. We really appreciate it. It means people are actually listening, which is really nice. Bailey's Bug, BBB. I just call you BBB. I apologize. You've got a little bit of a trip up on the name. My tongue just does not want to work. So I apologize. I got a huge apology for that. But thank you again for being here so much. I loved you guys for being here and having a quick listen. Let's see. Anybody else want to say hi? Get their name shout out? If not, again, thank you guys. So our next song, our last song, I will just let it play out till the end and then end the podcast. So if you guys want to listen to the song, it is Faster Car, the Spanish version by Rindez Voodoo. His actual last name is Voodoo. I like the name. So thank you guys again for being here. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a great evening or maybe afternoon, depending on where you're at in the world. Thank you.
Solo un rayo del sol cambia el tiempo en el reloj. Hoy mis deudas reciben perdón. Pago por el show. Me siento feliz porque si no soy yo, pues ¿quién? Todos caen a mi lado. El freno lo arranqué. Me siento feliz porque yo no dudo mi power. Te burlaste de mí, se acabó. Trata de festejar, celebramos el bienestar. Tantas estrellas brillan, quiero un carro que corra más. Nada me rompe, no, nada me rompe. Trata de festejar, celebramos el bienestar. Tantas estrellas brillan, y Marte me espera mientras rodea. Nada me rompe, no, nada me rompe. Tantas estrellas brillan, quiero un carro que corra más. Traigo un fin y después fumo un cabo de cigarette. Me pierdo en la ciudad, ha llegado mi tiempo ya. Voy a vivir porque si no soy yo, pues ¿quién? Todos caen a mi lado. Los menos los arranqué, me siento feliz porque vivo mi vida centrado. Te burlaste de mí, se acabó. Trata de festejar, celebramos el bienestar. Tantas estrellas brillan, quiero un carro que corra más. Nada me rompe, no, nada me rompe. Trata de festejar, celebramos el bienestar. Tantas estrellas brillan, y Marte me espera mientras rodea. Nada me rompe, no, nada me rompe. Tantas estrellas brillan, quiero un carro que corra más. A veces yo soy yo voy a ser otro yo. A veces yo soy yo voy a ser otro yo. Los frenos los arranqué, el riesgo me cae bien. Los frenos los arranqué, el riesgo me cae bien. A veces yo soy yo voy a ser otro yo. A veces yo soy yo voy a ser otro yo. Los frenos los arranqué, el riesgo me cae bien. Los frenos los arranqué, el riesgo me cae bien. Trata de festejar, celebramos el bienestar. Tantas estrellas brillan, quiero un carro que corra más. Nada me rompe, no, nada me rompe. Trata de festejar, celebramos el bienestar. Tantas estrellas brillan, mi parte me estará mientras yo vea. Nada me rompe, no, nada me rompe.